Shalom and welcome once again to Pearls of the Torah. I'm Moreh Matan, Pastor Matt McKeown, and it's my joy to be with you this week, as it is every week when we get together and study the Torah. This week we are in Parashat Vayishlach, and this is a pivotal turning point in the life of Jacob. We not only see him meeting his brother Esau for the first time in a long while, him being very nervous about it. We have the wrestling match that Jacob has. We have the incident of falling upon the neck of Jacob to kiss him. Is it really sincere? All of these things are at play here. The terrible tragedy of Dinah, the sister, happens in this Torah portion. All sorts of things. And so let's just dive right in. I appreciate you joining with me every single week. Please subscribe to this channel if you have not done so already, and please share this video so that as many people as possible can be blessed by it. So we could call the thoughts today for Parashat Vayishlach struggles and spiritual encounters. Struggles and spiritual encounters. First, we're going to look at Jacob's preparation for meeting his brother Esau. First, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 32 in the first several verses here and look at certain aspects or points that we could see in the Torah portion here in chapter 38. It says there in chapter 32, verse 8. It says there in chapter 32, "And Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed." As he's preparing to meet Esau, he has two of these different emotions. And in the Hebrew, these, just like in English or in any other language, these are two different emotions, being afraid and being distressed. And as you know, this Torah cycle, we are looking at the commentary of the Or HaChaim, and he mentions that it's important that the Torah gives these two distinctive words for the emotions that Jacob is feeling at this time. He has what the Or HaChaim will refer to as a dual response of being afraid and being distressed. And it reflects two different concerns. He was afraid by being killed by Esau. He's afraid of being killed by Esau, but he himself is distressed at the thought of killing others, even if it's in self-defense. So the Or HaChaim mentions Jacob's righteousness. You know, he is described when we first meet him as a young adult, as an ish tam, as a pure man, a righteous man, a man who is innocent. And the Or HaChaim emphasizes this righteousness, this innocence, noting that even the thought of taking a life, even justifiably, troubled him deeply. And this highlights Jacob's profound commitment to being spiritually righteous, to having integrity, and to have his morality intact. It is interesting to me that he has these two emotions at the same time, afraid of being killed, but not wanting to kill someone else. Psychologically and emotionally, as human beings, we can have within us multiple emotions going on at the same time. As many of you know, my bachelor's degree is in pastoral counseling, and it is not uncommon when we go through a difficult situation, a trying time, a tragedy, a trauma in our lives. It is not uncommon for us to have a multiplicity of emotions going on at the same time. And this sometimes in itself can become distressing to us, this idea of not really knowing how to feel. And I am always impressed that the Torah brings out the humanness of these patriarchs. These are not people that the Bible speaks of in terms like propaganda. They are flawed. They are human. They are afraid and distressed. And I think that's very important for us to remember. We can't put these people up on pedestals. We need to emulate them as spiritual heroes, but realizing that they are just men and women. They are just people like you and I. And we can have the same sort of victory that they have in their lives that are played out in the stories of the Bible. I think that's so important for us to remember. Number 2, Jacob's strategy: prayer, preparation, and gift. So it says here in chapter 32, continuing on in verses 10 through 13, I'm unworthy of all the kindnesses and truth that you have shown your servant. So Jacob is giving this earnest and honest prayer. I think this is the appropriate response. When we're afraid and distressed, what should we do? The first thing we should do is to pray. But he doesn't just pray, he prepares, and he also gets ready a gift. And if you'll remember, he divides his people up into 2 groups. He's sending people ahead of him to meet his brother, to give him these gifts. The Or HaChaim points out that Jacob's prayer is a model of humility and gratitude. I always like to tell people that before we ask God for something, we need to thank him for what he's already done. We need to approach him in gratitude and thankfulness for what he's already done and already doing in our lives. You know, in the Siddur, we pray that prayer that says that we are thankful to the Lord for his miracles every day, evening, morning, and midday. He gives us miracles every day, and his mercy is new every morning. Let us not forget to be thankful before we ask for one more thing. So the Or HaChaim interprets this acknowledgement of unworthiness as an expression of concern that his past sins might negate divine protection. This, once again, is, I think, a normal human response and a normal human emotion, being worried that our past sins, our past transgressions and mistakes even, might affect our future. By dividing his camp, sending gifts, and praying, Jacob employed both spiritual and practical strategies, balancing faith in God with personal responsibility. You know, there is this Jewish tradition that says that we cannot count on a miracle happening at the last moment. And what this tells me is that when we pray for something, we need to give we need to have a door within our prayer that allows the Lord to say no. Not that we allow the Lord, but you know what I mean. That it allows for the caveat that the Lord may not answer the prayer in the way which we would prefer. So there are some times where, perfect example, where someone gets a terrible diagnosis of a sickness, of a disease, maybe a late stage cancer. They get a horrible diagnosis, and sometimes what I will tell them is we need to pray for God's complete healing, but we also need to prepare mentally that if we are not healed, that we need to make sure that we are doing those types of things that make every day count, that we need to be preparing for every eventuality, and we need to make sure that we are, especially if we have children or grandchildren, and we need to make sure that our loved ones know how much we care and that we are saying the things that we need to say, just in case the Lord decides not to give a miraculous healing, and this may be the way that we leave this earth. So this, I think it's good to prepare for possible disappointment and tragedy, but to pray and to hope for the best outcome, for a full and complete healing. Now we come to point number 3, Jacob's struggle with the angel. In Genesis 32:25, it says, "And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn." Now, in Or HaChaim's commentary, this man is identified as an angel, specifically Esau's spiritual representative. Or HaChaim explains that the struggle was not merely physical, but symbolic of the ongoing conflict between good and evil, represented by Jacob and Esau. Jacob's victory symbolizes the ultimate triumph of righteousness, but his limp signifies the enduring challenges and scars that come with struggles. Now, it is fun for us as believers to theorize and postulate as to who he is wrestling. Some will say that this is an angel. Some will say it is Esau's guardian angel. Some will say that it is Hasatan, and some even have a belief that it is Messiah. Whatever belief that you have, of course, the Or HaChaim thinks that this is the spiritual representative for Esau, the guardian angel of Esau. Whatever you believe about this, this is definitely more than just a man that he wrestles with. It is interesting, Rashi and other commentators tell us that the reason this being says that it has to leave, it is almost daybreak, is when the angels are all giving praise to God, and they don't begin praising God until we begin praising God in the morning. When we do our shacharit prayers, they take the cue from us. What a wonderful thought that there is for lack of a better term, a worship service, a prayer service that happens with the angelic beings, and they take their cue from humanity. Number 4, the renaming of Jacob. This is yet another momentous part of this Torah portion. Some may even say that this is more significant than the wrestling, maybe even more significant than the gifts and these other aspects of the Torah portion. This is huge. It's a change of identity, and in a way, perhaps a change of mission. So it says here in chapter 32, verse 29, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and men and have prevailed." So the Or HaChaim says that the name change to Israel reflects Jacob's elevation to a higher spiritual status. Or HaChaim notes that the name Jacob, Yaakov, implies a follower or supplanter, while Yisrael, Israel, signifies direct engagement with God and men. This transition marks Jacob's transformation into a figure of leadership and divine representation. This is important for us to note because from here on, sometimes you will see two namings. You will see a verse that maybe has a corollary with it, that it says, this and this, O Jacob, this and this, O Israel. And you will think, well, that is the same person. But what is interesting is when we refer to Jacob as the people, and when we refer to Israel as the people, when God is talking about the people of Jacob, the rabbis tell us that this is the name used when they are not living up to their full spiritual potential. But when they are referred to as Israel, this is when they are spoken of in their maturity, in their fullness, in their full mission that God has for them. So we need to be making sure that when we read these scriptures, we're seeing the deeper meaning there of Jacob means one thing, Israel means another. And then we come to number 5, Jacob's encounter with Esau. So he sends the gifts ahead. He finally sees his brother face to face. Is he going to kill him? And this is what happens there in chapter 33, verse 4. It says, Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, and fell upon his neck. Now, there's a word there, and he kissed him. Vayishlach is this word. But what's interesting is, if you spell this word with a different letter, when it is spelled with a kuf rather than a kaf or a chaf, it has a different meaning. When it is spelled one way, it means and he kissed him. But even though it's spelled differently, it's pronounced the same. When it's with the other letter, it means and he bit him. Very interesting. So the ambiguity of Esau's embrace and kiss has led to various interpretations. Or HaChaim highlights Bereshit Rabbah's commentary that the kiss could be interpreted as insincere or momentarily genuine, that he didn't really mean it. Now, what's interesting is this word "and he kissed" has dots above it. Dots above the letters, and this is to grab our attention and to make us pay attention to the reading. And there are many different interpretations as to why we should be paying attention to this word. One is that yes, he kissed him, but he didn't mean it. He was giving a greeting of a kiss, but it was not sincere. This, of course, reminds us in the Brit Hadashah of Judas, of Yehuda, the betrayer who greets Yeshua in the garden with a kiss. But it is not a sincere kiss. It is a betrayer's kiss. So that's one interpretation. Another is the one that I've just mentioned to you, is that he did not go to kiss him, but rather to try to bite his neck and kill him. However, the rabbis tell us that something miraculous happened, that Jacob's neck became like marble, and Esau broke his teeth on the hardness of Jacob's neck. It's really quite interesting, the different interpretations that we have here. Now, the Or HaChaim does emphasize that Jacob's spiritual preparation ensured divine protection, and that even Esau's hostility was subdued temporarily by God's intervention. Now, something that we should mention, of course, and we just talked about it last week in our Torah study, that Esav, is a symbol of Christianity, and that Jacob is a symbol of the Jewish people. Now, they do have this momentary reconciliation, but then they each go their own way. Now, if it was a real reconciliation, why are they separating again? And so the rabbis ask this question: shouldn't Jacob have tried to rectify the soul of his brother Esau? And the answer is yes. There should have been a restoration. There should have been a rectification. Esau, even in the womb, would leap in his mother's womb when she passed by an idol's temple. And Jacob would leap when she passed a Beit Midrash, a house of study. So Jacob had this struggle with his brother where they were interested in different things. Jacob in the things of the Torah and of study. We read there that he was a man that dwelt in tents, and we see from the rabbis that these are the tents of Shem and Eber that taught him the Torah. But we see Esav being bloodthirsty. We see him being someone who loves violence, loves blood. We talked last week about how he hunted down and killed Nimrod, this evil king. So there is this tendency toward idolatry and toward evil and toward bloodshed that Esau has, that Jacob should have rectified. And I'm not saying this just on my own. This is something that Rabbi Shapira has taught us, that there should have been this rectification. And so what Rabbi Shapira and other Messianic leaders are doing, people that are Jews that have come to the Messiah, what they are doing in these last days is what Jacob should have done. They are doing this reconciliation and this rectification of bringing Esau, or we could call him Edom, back to the God of Israel. And this is something that we as Gentiles, we're like Ovadia, we are like Obadiah, who was a member of this house, of this people of Edom, but he prophesied against Edom. He rose up from among the people and prophesied against them and urged them to repent. And so this is something that we all have a part in. If we're Jewish, we need to be playing the part of Israel, of Jacob. And if we are Gentiles, if we're Christians, then we need to be doing the part of Obadiah, of Ovadia, that we need to be making this rectification. We've talked many times in Zechariah chapter 8 about the grabbing the tzitziot of the Jew, but what is interesting is, what Rabbi Shapira will tell us is, yes, the Gentile has to grab the garment of the Jew, but the Jew has to extend his garment so that it can be grasped. What a tremendous picture on the partnership that needs to happen in these last days. I pray that this Torah study has been a blessing to you, and pray that you would read through it yourselves and even delve into some of the more difficult passages that we did not have a chance to get to here, especially the assault on Dinah and her capture, the slaughter of the men of Shechem by the two brothers. This is something that It's difficult for us to read, but it all plays a part in the overarching story of Israel and of the Torah. Thank you once again for joining with me. Once again, I'm Moreh Matan, Pastor Matt McKeown, wishing you all the best. Shalom.